Where's the flashlight? Where's the flashlight? Oh! Here it is. Ah! It's too bright. There we go. Got one of these cool things. Hey, you should get one of these if your power goes out. Or if you do something and you knock the power out in your house. Not that I did that. But wouldn't that be hilarious if that's exactly what I did at the beginning of this episode that's about electricity? Anyway, just be careful. Enjoy this episode and take as much caution as you should, because as far as I know, you are just a DIY person, and so am I, and I'm not an electrician. So, as a disclaimer, this is just for fun, right? So, turn off the breakers, wear gloves, don't be crazy. Now, if you want to see, just come with me. I'll show you what it is that I accidentally did. Okay, follow me. All right. Never mind. Here's the show. Let's start the show. Hi, my name's Matt.
And this is Brandon.
And we are here to tell you to keep your walls intact and be smart. Got to DIY. Oh, baby, you know why. Well, if you got the time, I'm gonna give it a try. But before you start, we got advice for you all. If you got to hammer, then you got to solve. Baby, please, don't look out that wall. Don't look out that wall. Please do not look out that wall. Really bad idea. Speaking of being smart, let's talk about something that everybody needs to know about, and that's electricity. It's a shocking subject, I'll tell you that. But you gotta be real. You gotta be current. Whenever you're discussing these sorts of things.
Yes.
And you gotta follow the code.
The puns, I love them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, did you have anything in mind that you want to just start out with, or what's your experience with electricity?
Okay. So first of all, I have messed with a lot of stuff in my house and learned as I went. You bought me that booklet when we bought the house, and I've used that quite a bit, just and also YouTube and Google and all that kind of stuff, trying to make sure that I do it correctly. But again, you learn by experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I always turn off the breaker when I remember to, because I think that's rule number one.
It is rule number one. That is rule number one, is cut power to wherever you're working on.
Yeah.
And to do that, you need a well-labeled circuit breaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you need to know, well, first you got to know where your circuit breaker is, right?
Right.
That's something a lot of people don't know.
That's one thing it'd be kind of hard to imagine me not knowing where something like that is, but and it's in different places in every house, it seems like. Is there a code for that? Like where it's supposed to be? Or
so here's one thing that I will say at the very beginning is I'm not an electrician, so I don't want to say what's code and what's not,
Okay.
because so you've got, and here's why. You have like a national code,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course you have state codes, and you also have like county city code. Like, I mean, it can go pretty deep, and it depends on where you are, what code you have to follow. So that's a big thing. I can kind of tell you, I guess, some minimums or what's safe. And let me see here. I don't think there's a real question to where, because I've seen a whole lot outside and I've seen a lot inside.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it really matters where it is. Um, I think it should be inside, honestly. Um, Ours is in our garage. I think going outside to deal with electricity is just a bad thing, right? Because more than likely it's gonna, like, a storm is gonna trip something. Lightning is horrible, and that'll hit, trip a breaker. And then you've got to go outside in the pouring rain in the middle of a storm to the breaker system. No. Anyway, so yeah, that's you killing the breaker before you do that. That's really smart. I rarely do kill a breaker before I do electrical.
Mm-hmm.
I've been shocked multiple times.
So,
I,
welcome to this new segment.
I'm just
What
gonna
to do and what not to do.
I want to tell you my experience, man. I'm gonna tell you, it hits you quick.
Yeah.
It really does. And I tell you what, that it's kind of funny, just like replacing outlets or switches or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So most of them, you've got two, three wires, uh,
Right.
unless it's an outlet, like in a line of things, there's a three-way switch or something like that. It's going to have, most switches have just two wires going to it. So you're like, all right, I'll just take this one off and make sure it doesn't touch anything, and then take the other side off and make sure it doesn't touch anything, and then replace the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And you do that, and while you're taking one wire and making sure that it doesn't touch anything, the other wire on the outlet or on the switch, falls and hits the box and hits something else, and sparks go everywhere. That's happened a time or two.
So here's what's happened to me, and the weird thing that I run into talking about trial and error. The way this house is wired, um, I mean, it wasn't just straight up like I expected. Like, first of all, I had to figure out which breaker was what because
Mm-hmm.
none of it was labeled. I had to label it myself.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just got Sharpie marks all over it in
Yep.
my own language. Like, the next person that lives here is like, what is this guy talking about? The bathroom and the what? So anyway, I figured that out.
What's the bonus room?
Yeah. So I had to figure that out, and then there were one or two times where now I won't usually turn off the breaker if I'm exchanging a light socket, because
Right.
that has something in the middle
Exactly.
that can shut off the power so it doesn't get to me unless somebody walks in and is like, hey, I need to turn on the light in here to see what's going on. you know
And even just replacing a light bulb isn't really, because that doesn't really have the where the hot and neutral like touch each other and shock each other.
mm-hmm.
So unless for some reason the bulb is broken and the filaments inside touch each other, then there can be some issues.
That sounds dangerous.
But yeah, once you turn off the switch, the power to, well, I'm not going to say that either because it depends on how it's wired, but more
Yeah.
than likely the power to the light itself is completely off.
Well, this is, I guess, going to be an entire journey of all the things that I've discovered because, and I'm going to explain this one part and it's going to bleed into something else. But
Mhm.
I was shocked by an outlet that I was changing out the receptacle.
Literally or figuratively.
Both. I was shocked that I was shocked because I wasn't expecting it,
Uh-huh.
and it happened more than once. And the second time made me even more pissed off because I was just like, what am I doing? I turned off the breaker,
Yeah.
you know, and I thought maybe it was like residual energy that was left over, but I don't know if that's a thing when we're talking about wires. They're either hot or they're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, come to find out, there are some breakers or some receptacles and light switches that sort of have wires that are crossing from other breakers.
Hmm.
So I have a receptacle that I turned off the hot side, but the what's the other one? The load, the other wire,
Yeah, the
basically.
low, the neutral,
Yeah, yeah. So you have the hot side, and then the one that's not hot,
like the
not
ground.
coming. Yeah, that goes basically to the next whatever it is, and that one still had electricity on it. So that's what shocked me. And so I had to figure out which receptacles turned off, which ones,
Yeah.
and it was just crazy.
Yeah. It is crazy. And I've seen houses that, especially houses that have renovations done and like they, especially like knock out walls or try to add things in rooms, add rooms, subtract rooms, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a breaker that pretty much controls a whole room, like a bedroom, except for one outlet.
Yeah.
You can flip one breaker, everything in that one room completely goes except for a random outlet. And that's the one you're trying to change. So you like turn on the lights all on, right? And then you go and flip the breaker and it's off. And you're like, okay, well, this room's done. Not really.
I have, I think, three different breakers that control the outlets in my bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and there's one receptacle that's controlled by a light switch that's on the opposite side of the room.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that. I just had turned the breakers off to change it out, and then I turned the breakers back on, and I plugged something in, and I was like, there's no way I messed this up.
No, you
It's
did something
just
wrong.
it's
Yeah.
just take it out and put the wires back where you found them. I mean, it's not that hard, and I was like, what is going on? Uh, but yeah, it was the light switch on the other side, which has no other purpose besides just to deactivate that receptacle.
And two things on that I want to point on. So the light switch that with the receptacle, you've got to be careful because sometimes the bottom receptacle can be always hot and the top receptacle is only to a switch. Or they can um, wire it to where the whole receptacle is controlled by that switch.
Whoa.
So there's an interesting thing. And oh, I think I forgot the other thing I was going to talk about.
Did you get a haircut?
Not recently.
Okay.
I've had a toboggan on all day, so that's why
Oh,
it's got the hat hair.
nice. It's a good day
Um,
for that.
God, it's cold.
Oh, I don't know if I guess we're still um, learning who our audience would be, but I would think uh, certain parts we might need to throw in some vocab. In fact, a previous episode, I just threw in a whole section about how we were talking about creosote because I had to go in and research it and figure out what we were talking about because we were not talking about the same thing. So we,
Nice.
I had to clarify, but receptacle is a plug-in. That's just a fancy word for it, in case you didn't know that.
Yes, yes. Okay, and now I remember what I was going to touch base on
Okay.
is you said that you unhook the wires and put the wires back in the same spot. which is not always the case.
Okay.
Just because you replace one outlet with another, basically the same looking outlet, their screws where their hot and neutral and ground go can be different. Usually the ground's always the same. The ground is at in an odd place and it's a green wire or a
Right.
green screw.
Yeah. Or in this case, in my house, it's just a bare copper wire.
Yeah, yeah. So the bare copper wire goes to
The
which
green
usually
screw.
a green screw on the
Yeah.
outlet. However, the hot and the neutral can be reversed depending on like the brand of the outlet and everything.
Hmm.
So that's fun, especially in like um usually if it's the last so it can get technical. This can get really deep really quick. Um you can have so many outlets on one line, and what I call a line is so it goes from the breaker box to, let's say, one bedroom outlet,
Hmm.
and then it goes to another bedroom outlet, then another bedroom outlet, then another bedroom outlet, and that's all one line.
Yeah.
And in the middle of that line, you have hot and neutral coming in one side and going out the other. So you've got four wires on it. But at the end of the line, where it doesn't have anything else, it's just got two wires going in to make it hot.
Hmm. Right.
Um, so if you're replacing an outlet in the middle of the line and the things are screwed up, now you've screwed all the outlets, through the rest of like downline, down the flow.
Yeah.
So all the other outlets are screwed up as well.
So
So
yeah, that's one thing I found out that I mean I didn't do that, but I'm just thinking out loud. Like you should, if you're going to go back and forth, that's sort of the pain in the neck that you run into whenever you're changing out receptacles because you got to know which line is coming in from where and which one is the hot. And it's good to have a no contact voltage meter. It doesn't tell me the voltage. I just bought it at Home Depot. It doesn't tell me what the voltage is. It just tells me which one is the live wire. Because once you
Mhm.
have everything disassembled, taken out of the wall, then you have to run back outside and turn back on the breaker, and then come back in and make sure which one is the hot one.
Yep.
Um, because sometimes you'll forget, and you don't want to forget that.
And for outlets, there are three good tools that you can get: a voltage meter, which is great to have on multiple different occasions.
Mm-hmm.
There is a basically an outlet tester.
Yeah.
They have a standard tester and they have a GFCI tester where you
Mm-hmm.
can actually trip the outlet itself. Like if you have a GFCI outlet, and we can go into that later,
Yeah.
exactly what that is. Um, but that's the one with the little test button that actually trips itself before it actually blows the breaker.
Mm-hmm.
And this little tool, it's got the three prongs, and you plug it into an outlet just like any other plug-in, and it will tell you if it's hooked up right with the lights that turn on when you plug it in, and you can push a button to trip it if it's a GFCI outlet. So that's a good tool to have. And another tool that's good to have, it looks kind of like an ink pen, and the ones that I've seen most common, it's got a light on one end and I guess like a little pointer in the other end that you put in one of the holes of the outlet,
Mm-hmm.
and it beeps if there's current there.
Yeah.
You can also kind of touch it on the side of a hot wire, like get it anywhere near a hot wire, and it'll also beep. So you
Yeah,
can
that's
touch
what I
it.
was talking about. That's the one I bought.
Mm,
It does. It looks like an ink pen.
okay, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then good. Yeah. So there's that. Yeah, there's also so the voltage meter, the one you can change it to like ohms and current and all that kind of stuff. And it's got two little metal things on each end that you put one on hot and one on neutral, and it tells you.
I had to borrow one of those to test out when we first moved in. The dryer stopped working,
Mhm.
and we found out that it was the actual breaker that needed to be replaced. So and that's not the first one that I've had to replace, but or the last one, I mean. But yeah, it's good to have one of those because I had to trace it back basically and find out because it wasn't, dryers have to have more voltage than other things. So you have to figure. I had to, is the dryer working? Is the outlet working? Is the
Exactly.
breaker working?
Exactly. And I just had a similar situation with the a stove in a kitchen because different stoves need different currents coming in. So
Mm-hmm.
most of them, um, there's some that can go off. So the standard current coming into most outlets here in the United States are 110 volts,
Mm-hmm.
and the dryer and most oven range combos need 220 because they're just a bigger appliance
Yeah.
and need that. And I had a 220 hooked up for the oven. However, the electrician who ran the wire to it thought it was a gas, and gas doesn't hold as much or need as much
Yeah.
electricity
Yeah.
as an electric oven.
Mm-hmm.
And though it was getting a whole lot of current, it wasn't getting enough to push like the stovetop and the oven itself
Mm-hmm.
because the wire itself wasn't big enough. So there are tons of things that you need an electrician for. It's
Do you want to?
crazy.
Do you want to go ahead and tell us that the name of that electrician that messed up?
No,
I
no,
was just.
no,
I,
because I love him and he's still my go-to electrician.
I was kidding. I'm sure people make mistakes.
He knows who he is.
Yeah. um. Oh, I didn't say my disclaimer. I guess I should have started that I am also not an electrician. I don't know if I needed to tell everyone that, but I don't have any licenses except a license to kill.
There you go.
Yeah.
How do you drive around then? I guess illegally.
Yeah, a bike most of the time. I watched. This is random, but I was watching horrible Shark Tank pitches, and this one dude, he was in Australia, and he said, "This is going. I need $5 million, and you all are going to make $5 billion because it's going to revolutionize the way people ride bikes." And he had just taken a bike and put different pedals on it. He's
Mhm.
like, "People are going to win the Tour de France using this bike," and they're like, "One, probably not. Two, I think you're being a little too generous with your numbers there, but." um, but
So
yeah,
he needed $5 million for new pedals.
yeah, he didn't get it though.
I was about to say, did he get it?
You know what?
That's
He won them over.
that's a salesman right there. $5 million for some bike pedals.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I feel like we really went down a rabbit hole. I don't know what the original.
Well, the first thing we were talking about receptacles and wiring them correctly, especially if you're taking them out, you need to make sure that you put them back in correctly if you're updating them. You talked about the types of tools that are helpful, the voltage meter, and I got a good pair of wire cutters too, like some of those.
Yes. And it's funny, like I have what I think is a good pair of wire cutters. Like
Mm-hmm.
they they're pliers, they look like pliers, right? And they've got the snips and then they can strip the wire from
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
larger pieces of wire down to
Mm-hmm.
smaller pieces of wire.
Yeah.
And then they've got the little thing on the end that crimps them
Mm-hmm.
together. They also, a fun fact, on a lot of them, they have like a little hole in the metal piece
Yeah.
randomly out there. That's to take that wire and actually hook it to make an easy hook.
Yeah. I
They can
use
go
that
around
all the
and
time. I love it.
it blew my mind when I learned that. It was crazy. I saw my electrician do it, and I was like, okay, now I trust you.
This guy knows what he's doing.
Now he knows what he's doing. Yeah, that's funny. But I've got one. It's a smaller pair, and my electrician is just like this. You've got to get a new one.
Mm-hmm.
This is not good.
Yeah.
Not quality. And I'm like, you know what? If it's anything big, I'm just gonna call you. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say one of the first things, especially if you are going to plan on doing some DIY and replacing outlets and receptacles yourself, which is as long as you've got the breakers off, I feel like is a completely easy to moderate DIY thing to tackle.
Oh
And
yeah.
it really makes a lot of difference when you've got, especially if you're going to paint, all your rooms, and then you've got that old yellow, the dingy outlets and
Mm-hmm.
switches. When you
Yeah.
replace them with the bright white, it just makes it look so much more updated.
Totally. Yeah.
Um, I would say, especially if you have an older house or a panel that's not um, labeled, to do that first. And what you do is just get one of these tools that we just talked about and shut off one breaker and go room by room and try all that, the outlets and the switches and see what they go, and have a little notepad, number the breakers. Um, they're probably going to be numbered already, possibly, but just kind of draw your breaker on a piece of paper and then have enough room each outside each other breaker, and tell exactly what it goes to.
Now we're assuming if you're listening to the show, that's something that would interest you is making lists and going through and changing out receptacles
Mhm.
because it's tedious work, but you know what? You'll get in the zone and time will go by and suddenly you'll be like, "Oh my goodness, I've done the entire house and now I own this."
Yeah, it's not overwhelming, and once it's done, it's done. And
Yeah.
now, no matter what happens for the rest of the time that you live there, if one outlet goes out or anything happens in any room, you know exactly what breaker to go kill and fix and replace or fit, whatever. So it's it's a small investment for the rest.
We may be preaching to the choir, but I think it's just going to make your life so much easier.
I think what we're trying to say is you should do it because
Yeah. We talked about the drug of DIY and how I went on a tear for a while where I was replacing. There are a couple left that I haven't got to yet because they were behind stuff,
yeah.
but for the most part, like in our bedroom and you know in the bathrooms and things like that, I replaced all the receptacles, and I get to the point where it'd be like 10:30 at night,
Hmm.
and I'd be like, "Oh man, I want to keep doing this, but I should probably go to bed."
Yeah. But you're all jacked up and you're like,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay. So did you replace all your necessary GFCI outlets?
That is a great question, Brandon. I replaced all the ones that were in the kitchen. The bathroom is a different story
Okay.
because I replaced the GF. Okay, this is a funny thing too because I work at Axiom, and most days I'm hanging out at my desk, which is at the data center, and people come in and out either to work on servers or stuff like that. But we have electricians on staff, and they're coming in and out, and I usually pick their brains, like especially when I was installing, like I had to figure out how to install a brand new exhaust fan with heater in it,
Oh yeah.
and they're like, "Oh, well, you have to get a different kind of wiring and stuff like that." And so, because I showed them, anyway, so I'm always picking their brain. And when I first started that, I was saying GFCI, which is what it says on the package. But
Hmm.
apparently, at least to these guys that I know, that's like saying ATM machine to them.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe it's just to this guy, but it just like he was like, "You mean GFI?" Because like now he's got me saying it because GFCI I guess to him sounds redundant. I don't know. I just thought it was funny. But anyway, it stands for ground fault circuit interrupter, right? Is that what that's just
Yes,
it?
that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
So basically, like what Brandon said, it's a layer of protection between something that shorts in between the receptacle and the breaker. Say like, and it's usually near a water source. So in the
Mhm.
kitchen, I replaced the ones, um, near the sink. And
Mhm.
actually, I wasn't sure if I should, and I can't remember if I asked you or the other guy. His name's Ryan. And I said, yeah, I replaced GFI between or behind the refrigerator too because it has water that goes into it. He's like, no, don't do that.
I remember that.
Maybe it was you that told me that, but
It could be
anyway,
me. Yeah.
yeah, don't do that because if you want your refrigerator to stay on, um, and if for some reason it because they can be pretty sensitive, and if it flips for some reason, then all your food is ruined. Now, if you just have a regular outlet behind there and something else goes out, um, that's when I mean, you want it to be a bigger problem that causes your refrigerator to go out, right? Instead of just like, oh, you're gone for a couple of days and
Exactly. Because your GFI outlets, the whole reason for them is that they trip on a less interrupted, like a less shock than your actual breaker will. Now you have a breaker in your breaker box that's 15, 20 something amp breaker that holds multiple outlets and light switches, and they have a heavier load that's going to be needing it to trip. So a GFCI outlet, what it does is not only one, it will trip at a lower interruption than an actual huge breaker at your breaker box, but it trips at the outlet. So the current doesn't have to go all the way to the breaker box
yeah,
before it trips. It trips right there at the outlet. And what it does is, and there are GFCI outlets are expensive just normally, but there are all kinds of price ranges that they can get really expensive
yeah.
for the good ones. And they go out pretty regularly, unfortunately. And you can even buy a new one that's bad. I've done that multiple times.
Oh,
And what they do is when that compressor kicks off and then kicks back on, it could trick the outlet thinking there's like an arc fault or something having more load than it should on that specific outlet,
yeah.
and it'll trip it.
So uh, this is where I am with that. That's the example that I was about to bring up next. And let me continue by saying words that don't really have anything to do with what I was going to say, and I could just continue to ramble, and basically we could edit this part out if you like, because I have to get my thoughts together
Mhm.
while I talk
Yeah,
instead of really saying what I mean.
love it.
So basically, the fact of the matter is, um, the light switches were tripping the GFIs, and that was my problem. I put in two next to each sink in the master bathroom, but then I would turn on the hallway light, which was on the same circuit, and it would trip them every time.
Yep.
And then the same thing with the guest bathroom. The guest bathroom just had one receptacle in there, but every time I turn on the hallway light,
It trip it.
yeah.
Yep.
I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that these light switches were three-way light switches.
No, it has to do with how it's hooked up.
Okay.
It one of the wires isn't correct. I ran into this not too long ago with same thing with the garbage disposal. So the
Oh
garbage
yeah.
disposal went to a switch in the kitchen, and
Mm-hmm.
on that same line was a GFCI outlet, and everything worked great. Right, I had one of those three prong plugs
Yeah.
plugged into the outlet, the GFI outlet. It hit the switch and it'll pop. It resets like it's supposed to, but every time you turn on the garbage disposal, it pops it. And it was something with a wire in the back that was hooked up incorrectly. I think I'm almost positive that's what it is.
A wire in the receptacle.
Yeah, on the GFI outlet
Mm-hmm.
itself, one of the wires behind it is on the wrong screw.
Hmm.
Either that, or I've also heard that if, like last time I was talking about outlets in a line,
Mm-hmm.
if there are two GFI outlets in the same line, now I've heard both sides of this, but I've heard that if there are two outlets in the same line, then both of those GFI outlets like compete with each other and can trip each other.
Hmm.
And then I've also heard that that's not a thing. So electricity, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, I've been racking my brain about it, and I thought it had to do maybe something with the weirdness of the way our house is wired because I haven't had any problems with anything else. Like in the
Yeah.
kitchen, they work fine,
Yeah.
and I get pretty obsessive about these wires. Let me
Yeah.
tell you, I had a three-way switch in the entryway hallway and I even talked to you about it, and it didn't work. And I unplugged it and plugged it back in like 4,000 times.
Yeah.
Finally, I was like, well, maybe. What if I just put the old ones back in? And it worked. So it was a bad switch. And I had no idea.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah. I was kind of mad, but also felt really good because once I plugged it in, I even filmed myself and sent it to my wife. I was like, look, I can do things.
I
I'm
was,
not an idiot.
I was gonna say too. I've run into issues where you're replacing a three-way switch, and okay, so if you're replacing a switch or an outlet, especially if you're new or if there are a lot of wires coming in and out of that
Hmm.
switch or outlet, take a
Yeah.
picture.
Yes.
Take a picture of the back of the outlet with the wires connected the best you can. Uh, I want to say without getting shocked, but your breaker should be off, so that shouldn't be a deal.
Hmm. Yeah.
But take a picture of it. That way you know which ones are hot. Like you just it's difficult to know, but you've got to know where it's coming into and where it's going out to, and sometimes even at um, like a light fixture, it can be switched around. Some of the wires can be messed up, so it's
Hmm.
not always usually. Most commonly, the black is hot and the white is neutral,
Right.
and you have a bare wire that's your ground. But if somebody wired the light fixture incorrectly and switched those around and somehow it works, like everything switched backwards, if you just go in blind and hook it up like it's supposed to be, it's going to be reversed with everything, and
Yeah.
it's just going to be it's going to be problems. And so that's a good tip. Take a picture of the back.
Yeah. I have to say, I I like whenever I can figure out things, especially electrical stuff, because there's nothing, especially like when I've been working on cars, there's nothing that kills my spirit more than not knowing why something electrical is not working.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes it's something in the wall or some short somewhere that's causing you problems and you don't know where it is, or you don't have the expertise to fix it, or you don't feel like tearing out your wall.
Completely, and I completely agree with this because it seems so basic, right? You've got a
Yeah.
hot wire, you've got a neutral wire, sometimes you have the ground which doesn't carry anything, and like whether it works or it doesn't, the ground has nothing to do with it,
Yeah.
right? It's something about that hot and that neutral, and there's so many ways that it can go wrong.
Yeah.
There's so many ways that people before you messing with it can mess it up.
Oh my goodness.
It's the thing.
Yes.
It's the thing because sometimes, especially in an older house that's been remodeled or rewired a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
they've added wires, added outlets, that kind of stuff. Like you don't know what they did, and unfortunately, that plays a big role with how you proceed in the future with updating things.
Mm-hmm. Another clarification corner. We did. What was the first one we did? We said, oh, a receptacle is a plug-in, is an outlet. Same thing.
Mhm.
Um, you have your different kind of switches as well, which I learned from DIY. Your two-way switch is just your regular light switch. It's one. It's the one that you walk in the living room, you turn it on. When you walk out, you turn it off. Three-way switch is where you have two switches on either end of the room, and they operate the same thing. Um, so that and those are the ones you definitely want to take a picture of when you take them apart because they have more than just a hot wire and a neutral wire.
Yep.
Um,
And then a four-way switch is three switches to one fixture.
mm-hmm.
And the funny thing, FYI, if you ever want to put a dimmer, I don't know if this is true for a three-way switch, but I know it's true for a four-way switch. If you ever want to put a dimmer in a room that has three switches to one outlet or to one light fixture, that dimmer has to be on the main switch, which is the first power coming in from the box.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then from there, it goes like it usually goes to the light fixture and then to the other switches. And there's like a wire that goes from switch to switch, but most of them go fixture to switch.
Mm-hmm.
It's really confusing. I have to look up a diagram every time I mess with three-way switches.
That's yeah, it is. It is weird, and I don't know why. That sounds really complicated too to put a dimmer on a four-way switch.
It's possible.
I mean, it's. I'm sure it's possible. It just sounds really
Yeah.
way more complicated than I
The
would
only
want to
thing, like, yeah, just keep in mind if you put a dimmer on a four-way switch on one of them, it's got to be only on one of them because I
do. Mm-hmm.
don't think it works if you put two dimmers on the same circuit.
Yeah.
I don't know that. If you're an electrician and you want to comment,
Yeah.
please do.
Please
Feel
email
free.
us at
Yes.
don't knock down that wall. Sorry, no, that's yeah. Email that one because that's the wrong one. Don't knock out that wall at gmail.com.
Feel free. We will take your comments and questions and your corrections.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. But anyway, just know that if you put a dimmer and you have a four-way switch and it doesn't work, you probably replaced the wrong switch.
Yeah.
And you know your wires are correct. First, I would check the wires. Yeah, and then I would say it's on the wrong switch.
That was really the most frustrating part when because I watched two or three different videos and looked at diagrams and everything. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is how a three-way switch works.
Yep.
The wire comes in, and the way the three-way switch will work in that it allows current to pass through one switch even though it's in the
Exactly.
off position in quotes, right? Because they don't actually have the on off on the actual switch like the two-way does. That's one way you can tell.
It's frustrating.
Yep.
It is. And again, if whoever installed those switches before and the outlet or in the fixture, right, completely screwed it up and got it reversed or wired it horribly before, then you're really screwed.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be done. It can be fixed.
So far, you mentioned one of those little plugs. Um, someone, I think my grandpa and maybe you, or maybe I'm getting you mixed up with my grandpa, but uh, you plug it in to the wall, and it has some of them. The one I have at least has three little lights on it
Hmm.
that will, if it lights up in a certain pattern, that means the circuitry is correct.
Correct. Yep.
Um, so everyone I've done that to, in fact, the inspector did that same thing. He may have been
Yep.
the one that just, but
Yep.
so at least I know that.
That's really good. Yeah, it's good to know that if it's your outlet or if it's the item that you're plugging into the outlet, like what's wrong. You
Mm-hmm.
know, electricity, you've there's so much troubleshooting. So, and you've got to have some kind of tools to test things.
I still think it's magic. I really do. Like I'm an adult and I understand how electrons work, but if you're gonna have me explain it, it just sounds like magic because I don't know. I mean, amps, ohms,
Hmm.
volts,
Yeah.
all that,
Yeah.
watts. Those
Yeah.
are those are all different things.
Yeah. They're all different things. They all mean different things.
Yeah,
It's terrible. Yeah.
I think I even learned about them in physical science in ninth grade, but I did not retain that knowledge.
It's difficult. Yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah, I remember Jerry was trying to explain things to me. Like he wasn't giving me a lesson, but he was, because you have to deal with a lot of ohms and amps when you're talking about speakers.
Hmm.
And he's a speaker head. Uh,
Yes.
Jerry was our old boss at Papa John's, by the way. And so
Shout
in
out.
his yeah in his spare time, he was kind of a DIY guy too. He liked to build things. He built a big cabinet for his speakers. But he was talking about all different ways you gotta condition your speakers and like ohms and amps and all that kind of stuff, and just like my eyes start to glaze over when you start using the units of measure.
Uh-huh.
If it's not feet or pounds,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's about it.
It-
And even feet, like I have to use in my head, I have to compare the size of something to a Subway sandwich. Like in my head, I picture, okay, so that's about 2.5 sandwiches long.
okay. Yeah. 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 That's the way to do it.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So I think we've covered outlets and switches.
Mm-hmm.
Um, light fixtures, maybe. Light fixtures are usually pretty easy
Yeah, a lot of them I've
to
dealt with,
switch out.
especially in this house. That I guess they're when we're talking about code, from what I understand, it's
Hmm.
different from year to year. And if my house was built in 1980, so not everything had to be grounded.
Exactly. So some things are grandfathered in and that kind of thing. Um,
That's what I was learning when getting the new light fixtures and putting them in. I was like, what am I supposed to do? Because this thing says to plug in 3 wires and there's only two.
mhm,
Am I going to die?
mhm.
You know, I haven't.
Probably not.
So,
You're just not grounded. And I like I feel like I know what that means, but I don't really know what that means.
yeah. I like to stay grounded, if
Exactly.
that's what you mean.
Level-headed.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, the code thing, I would say so probably the biggest thing, especially as an agent and a flipper, when replacing everything, is using the GFCI outlets. It's pretty standard code to have them in the kitchens and bathrooms,
Mm-hmm.
basically within like 6 feet of a water source is pretty common. You also need them in laundry rooms.
Mm-hmm. I did put that. So that was the first one I ever did. I put it
Yeah.
in behind the washing machine,
Yep.
and I figured out. See, I had that moment where I thought, I think I've screwed this up
Yeah.
because um, I turned on the breaker and then I plugged something in and it didn't work But apparently, with GFCIs, however you say it, um, you can install it, but you still have to turn it on. Like it when you plug it in, when you install it,
Oh,
you
yeah.
still have to hit the button to
Yep.
turn off the
Yep.
switch
Yep.
to make it live.
Yeah. Because it's tripped
Yes.
at that point, so you have to reset it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably shouldn't mention that this is a thing and that I know this, but there's actually a way that you can wire a GFCI outlet to where it doesn't trip. You can like wire it a certain way to where it's basically a normal outlet, and then it doesn't trip.
I want to say that was one of the diagrams that I
Yeah.
saw in my
Yeah.
research. In fact, I saved it on my phone. I've just been wondering if I'll ever do anything with it.
It is possible to do. I would not recommend it, of course.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
definitely not recommended. Um, so yeah, 6 feet from a water source for sure in laundry rooms. I would probably say even in garages,
Yeah.
it would be highly advisable to have GFCI outlets there.
I'm glad you said that. Maybe I should try that in my garage and see if I can
Yeah,
get them to work in there.
there you go. And they have a new thing for um, basically new houses. It's called an arc fault circuit interrupter, an AFCI.
Okay.
And the common thing to do with that is it's basically a protector on your breakers themselves in the breaker box.
Mm.
So the breaker itself is arc fault um, protected. You still have your GFCIs inside, and then a huge arc. I don't even know what difference that is in just a normal breaker blown. Like I don't know why you need so much. Like why does it need to trip so many times? Like I get you don't want to get electrocuted yourself, but yeah. I don't know. It's 110. It won't kill you. It I've been electrocuted. I've hit those things a lot of times. Like you sometimes you step back and you're like, okay, am I having a heart? No, my heart's good. Is my heart good? Okay, my heart's good. We're good. We're
All
good.
information from this podcast is to be used for entertainment purposes. We are not professionals.
We are not professional.
But we have been electrocuted, if that means anything.
Have been electrocuted. Yes. Yeah. Usually if I get electrocuted, like 3 times by one receptacle, I'll cut the power. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I'll walk away. I'll walk away and then cut the breaker off and then come back. That's my blowing off steam. I'm like, all right, it won.
That's another. I'm curious about that now. If that's a trait among DIYs, because I definitely have done the same thing. My number is 2 though.
Mm-hmm.
When I got hit that second time, I was like, and then I just walk out of the room.
It makes you do that automatically.
Yeah.
Like it throws those bolts into you. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know because the electrician that I have, he rarely turns off the breakers.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're using proper PPE,
Yeah.
then you can keep yourself from getting electrocuted, which is, that's helpful.
He does. He has a lot of tools that I don't have that
Yeah.
helps him. So. Of course, he understands like the electricity a lot more than I do. So
That's another thing too. That's why I keep asking those guys, and I wonder if I have that capacity to understand it now that I'm an adult.
Yeah. I don't know because anybody listening right now, if anything that we've said goes over your head, just think like professional electricians. They can say things that go miles over our heads,
Mm-hmm. Oh
even
yeah.
with what we know. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of knowledge out there that for electricity.
They might as well just be speaking Spanish because I'm just like, okay, all right, you lost me there, bud.
Mm-hmm. Let me see here. I don't know if I really want to go into the different amps that your breakers need to go to. I'm going to say no, because if you're dealing with replacing amps or thinking that um, like you have a large load on one breaker.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing that a lot of DIYs will do. They will have so many outlets or whatever in one line that all go to one breaker. And let's say you know what breaker that is, and you go out there and it's a 20 amp breaker, and you're like, well, this 20 amp breaker keeps cutting off. I'm just going to replace it with a 25 amp breaker. That way it doesn't trip all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Huge no, no, don't do that. It means you have too much on one. And if you go up in amperage for the breaker, that means that the load needed to trip that breaker is a whole lot more. And they keep them low enough to trip those breakers. So if you get electrocuted or shocked or something happens where that breaker is supposed to blow pretty easily and you've put a larger breaker in there and it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
well then you can really screw some things up and probably really hurt yourself too. So definitely don't do that. If for some reason you have too much things on one breaker, you need to call an electrician and have him figure out what's taking so much load, because usually outlets and lights, especially the new LED lights, they don't pull just a whole lot.
Oh yeah,
So it's
no.
going to be more than likely some kind of appliance or something that you have
Mm-hmm.
um, plugged up, and they can kind of reroute outlets to different breakers to make them work a whole lot better than they're supposed to.
Right.
Because I mean, if you have like, oh, your refrigerator and your microwave both on the same breaker, they're probably going to switch it. They're probably going to break it. And if you go out there and just up the breaker, then they don't blow. Well, they're still pulling way too much, so you could ruin a fridge and a microwave, but not the breaker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason that so many amps on that breaker at the breaker box is that specific number for whatever it's pulling.
Can I? This is a confession moment. I need to tell you something.
Did you up a breaker amps?
No, I didn't. I didn't up any breakers in my home. I wasn't that bold, but I did up a few fuses in my car a long time ago because
Mm,
the radio kept going out, and so I put in like a 30 fuse instead of a 25.
yeah. This is the same thing, Matthew. See, now what happens more than likely, you have some kind of short or wire not connected correctly in your
Mm-hmm.
car,
Yeah.
or you have too much now on there, and you're going to be driving around one day and underneath your dash is just going to start smoking because one of the wires has just been like, all right, well, if if it's not going to blow the little amp out here, I'm just going to burn up.
I need to be clear though. This is something that I did much younger in my years. This is not my current car. I did not. I'm
So
not
you don't
doing
have the
that.
car. So
No,
it's probably burnt. It probably has burnt up on some teenager because of what you did. Yeah, okay. Okay. Podcast confessions.
Yeah. I don't remember which car it was, actually. Um, it
Well,
was
it's not
just,
around anymore, so it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Yeah.
It, a couple of those ended up in salvage yards, so that's probably where that one is.
Nice.
You know, I had a car one time that this actually is pretty funny to me. Back when we worked at Papa John's, I was driving this little Ford Contour and it stopped working. Like I couldn't get it to start. And first, see, I have this thing too, especially with cars, is that the first thing that I try is usually not what's wrong with it. But
Mhm.
my dad helped me buy a fuel pump. So I bought a new fuel pump, traded it out.
Mhm.
Fortunately, it was one of those cars where you could take out the back seat and the gas tank's right there. You just pull the fuel pump out, put a new one in, boom.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But nothing, wasn't getting any power to it at all. And so I took it to a shop, a local guy. They looked at it and they're like, well, we can't get the computer to hook up with it. It's got to be the computer. So we're just going to, we'll have to replace the computer. That'll be like $1,000. I'm like, look at me. Do you think I have seen $1,000, let alone have $1,000? I'm sorry, I'm not gonna. And they're like, well, you can just sell it to us, and we'll try to fix it. So that's what I did. Come to find out, it was just a wire, a wiring harness between the battery and everything else. It was like a $15 wiring harness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
See, even the pros can't figure out electricity,
Yeah,
especially on car. I mean, cars are a little bit different, but
but those guys bought a brand new computer for this car.
suckers.
I know. I felt so bad for them because they had to eat that cost. And I don't know what I did. I think after that car, I think I bought. No, that was when I went to my Ford Explorer. I had a Ford Explorer for a minute. Were you working at Papa John's when I had that one?
I don't know. The Ford Explorer. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I had that one for a short amount of time. Then I sold it to Zach Harkenreader.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Good times.
Mm-hmm.
Good peeps.
Yeah.
All right. Um, I think that's all I have on electricity. I don't know if that really, if we conquered anything.
I I could go on, but I don't know if I have enough power.
You need to get recharged.
Yeah.
Recharged first.
Um.
Do you have all these puns written down? Did you?
No, that's why it takes me so long to say them.
Okay.
If you were on this side of the meeting, you would hear large grinding sounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
The gears in the head
Right.
grinding away. Yeah.
Like a transmission with no fuel in it. Just
If anybody's ever heard that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I said a transmission with no fuel in it too, which is not a thing.
Well, fluid.
Yeah.
It's it's tomato, tomato.
Yes.
Right.
Potato, potato.
Exactly. It depends on where you're from. Sometimes it's fuel, sometimes it's fluid.
Yeah. I heard a story like that one time where, speaking of tomato, tomato, there was this girl that was doing some sort of talent show, and she was singing that song for the talent show. And so she was singing it. You say tomato, I say tomato. She doesn't understand.
You're supposed to say it two different ways.
Yes. I wish I could have been there.
So she didn't really understand what she was saying then.
Yeah.
She didn't hear. Yeah.
I think the irony was lost on her for sure.
It's funny. I like that. I like stories like that.
Me too.
Stupid people. Not maybe people doing stupid things.
I like a little bit of both. I mean,
It keeps you on your toes.
yeah, for sure. It's definitely a way that you can improve your self-esteem when you look at, like, just go online. If you're doing any sort of DIY project, you can look at, ways that people have messed up,
Oh, the fails are the best.
Mm-hmm. So my brother this will come up too whenever we talk to him about his project. From the tile work that I did, just looking at the pictures that he sent me, because he found water damage and so he decided to take out the tile that was around the bathtub, and just one picture of like a cracker sized tile that he had taken out just to show me, I was like, yeah, they did that all wrong.
Nice.
That's all I needed, was just wow.
Yeah. Perfect.
I can't wait to see what it looks like too. I'll have to send you a picture, because they took out, they had an extra long bathtub, I guess, and so they took that out and just made it a smaller shower, so that they could have shelving at the end of where the bathtub used to be.
Yeah.
Brand new floor, brand new tile. My brother pretty much did all the demolition, then he had somebody come in and do the rest.
Cool. That worked.
Then he bought some ceramic tiles that look like wood.
Ooh.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are pretty too.
Yeah. And not too expensive.
Right.
I'm sure I'll think of more things to talk about when we're talking about electricity, and I'm sure I'll run into more things in my experiences that we can bring up later.
Absolutely, part of it.
This will be an ongoing series.
Yes. This is just one podcast in a line of electrical podcasts.
Dang, I can't think of a pun.
Yeah, I know. If you do, just write it down. We'll catch it later.
Okay.
If that light ever turns on for you, just write it down. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got this video of a house that I took that I've got to edit. So I'm going to do that real quick.
Okay.
And call it a night.
Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been Brandon and Matt telling you all of our knowledge, because we have a lot of it, and it is time for us to share it with the world.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing, though, is that if you decide to pick up that hammer and do a little demolition, I'll edit that. If you decide to pick up that hammer and do a little demolition, please remember, don't knock out that wall.
Don't knock out that wall.
Don't do it.
Peace out.
Peace.
See you soon, man.
All right, man.
Don't